We're going to learn how to use custom endpoints in Gato GraphQL. You can access custom endpoints here from the menu, custom endpoints, and click on add new GraphQL custom endpoint to create a new one. The idea with custom endpoints is similar to the single endpoint, but then you can access data for a specific application or a specific type of user or a specific client, and every one of these endpoints will have its own GraphQL schema and its own configuration. You can expose more data, less data. It's up to you. You can decide how to configure it. So in this case, let's create a custom endpoint for our website app. We give it a title and then we click on publish. And now here we have in this section called custom endpoint overview, all the information that we need. The endpoint URL is /GraphQL/website app. If we click here, we are accessing the custom endpoint. The single endpoint will be /GraphQL, and in this case it's /GraphQL/ the slug that we have chosen when we created it. We can also access the graphical client that will execute queries against this custom endpoint. So in this case, we can select all the posts with the ID and the title, and this is accessing the custom endpoint. And we also can visualize the schema. We can customize what types we expose, with what fields we expose, and here we have the information for that custom endpoint. We can create more than one custom endpoint, of course. So in this case, we have website app. Let's create another one for the newsletter. Now we can expose data that will be accessible to our newsletter. We publish this. And now once again, here we have, this is the endpoint for the custom endpoint that we just created. So the idea is to expose certain data in an endpoint and not do it on the single endpoint. So let's do that. Right now, if we want to query the WP options data, we can do that. There is a field called option value, and we provide the name. So for instance, we have the admin email, and when we run this query, it provides the email of the admin that we have on the configured on the WordPress settings. And maybe we don't want to expose this information, they should be private. So what we can do is, let's configure the settings to ban this field everywhere. So we go to settings, and the configuration right now says behavior deny access on nothing, on no entries. This basically means that everything is being allowed. So we do the opposite. Now we allow access on nothing. That means that nothing is allowed. We save the changes. We go back to run the same query as before on the single endpoint, and now we see that it has been blocked. There is no option with name admin email, and this will be the same on the custom endpoints because we ban it everywhere. So we go to newsletter, and we execute. Let's go to the graphical client. Oh, sorry, not here. We go to the graphical client, and now we execute the same query. Now they have been banned. Now let's say that in this one, in the newsletter, we do want to be able to access that information. So what we do is we create a schema configuration allowing to access all of these fields. So we go to schema configurations, we create a new schema configuration, and we can scroll down to the section of the settings. Here it is, and we do a custom value. In this case, we keep it as it was before. We deny access on no entries, which means we allow for everything. We add a title saying with options. We publish this schema configuration. Now we go back to the newsletter, and we select this schema configuration with options that we create, save. And now when we run this query again, now this is accessible. So now we are banning accessing the admin email on all endpoints, and on this custom endpoint, it is still accessible. Okay. Now we can also have custom endpoints have a hierarchy, and they can actually share a persistent a schema configuration, so that you can create the schema configuration once and then inherit that for all of your custom endpoints. Or you can have different strategies, so that for instance all of the different clients have a schema configuration and so on and so forth. So let's do that. We will create a new schema configuration, a new custom endpoint here. Let's create it apps. And this one will have the schema configuration that we just created with options. We publish this one. And now we go to newsletter. And in newsletter, we say that the parent will be this one called apps. We save it. And now the schema configuration, we can also choose to inherit from the parent. Now we can still run the same query as before. There we go. And the information is still allowed. We can do the same with the other endpoint that we have, website app. We can add this as parent. We can say apps. There we go. And the schema configuration we inherit from the parent. Now we can see here we have the schema configuration set in apps, and all the children, they're also inheriting the same schema configuration. Furthermore, we can categorize the different the different custom endpoints that we have, the website app, the newsletter, they can have different categories. So let's do that. Newsletter, we can give it a category, endpoint categories. Let's create a new one called clients. We save this. And as we can see now, it is categorized. If we click here, we can see all of the different endpoints that have that category. And finally, we can make a custom endpoint be protected by password and be private. We can also make it accessible only to a certain client. We can say only you can access this and nobody else. So in this case, if we open the graphical client, it is accessible, and if we do the same, I will copy this URL and I will open now an incognito window here in my browser where I'm not logged in into WordPress. Now you can see this is still accessible, so you can give this URL to any client that wants to access their information, and it's accessible. But now we don't want it to be public. We want to have it only accessible to our clients and nobody else. So what we can do is here on status, we can say it is private, so you have to be logged in to access it, or we can protect it with a password. So let's say here password will be hello world, and we save this. Now it is protected by a password. If I go back here and I refresh here, it says it is protected. I need to say password hello world. And now we can access the endpoint. So you can protect the endpoint and just give the access only to your clients, or you can use it as you need to use it. All right, I hope that you have enjoyed the video. Thank you.